Hello and welcome to American Music, where we live our stories through the shared experiences of musical artists, storytellers, and documentarians. My name is Randall Keith Horton, and we have as our guest today Professor Dr. James John, my friend and collaborator, choral conductor, orchestral conductor, and wonderful, wonderful human being. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Randall.
I'm going to call you Jim. Do you mind
Please
that? Right,
do. Please do.
This is a great man, ladies and gentlemen. I just hope you can really get the enjoyment out of this segment of our program as I anticipate. Maestro James John is the conductor, music director, and artistic director of Cerdorion Vocal Ensemble, which is one of New York's most highly regarded volunteer choral ensembles. A chamber group of 28 mixed voices, the ensemble is known for its eclectic repertoire, encompassing music from the Renaissance to the contemporary, and audiences have come to appreciate the group's interpretive depth and technical excellence in many styles. Cerdorion has frequently commissioned new works and in 2011 launched its annual Emerging Composers Competition. It's designed to foster the creation and performance of new works for mixed chorus. Maestro James John expressed great interest in today's program, given that we are offering music that relates to American resources, American choral music. Under Dr. John's leadership, the choral program at the Aaron Copland School of Music, Queens College, New York, has become recognized as one of the finest collegiate choral programs in the region. Professor, I am interested in having our audience know where you have presented and taught internationally, especially Freiburg, Germany, and Basel and Stockholm and so on. Can you give us an idea of that? And then what your local presentations have been for the American Choral Directors Association.
Sure. Well, it was about 10 years ago now that I taught at the Freiburg Hochschule für Musik in Freiburg, Germany.
Yes.
I had a mentor who taught there, and we arranged an exchange. He came to the City University of New York for a semester, and I went there and taught for a month. So one of the things that I did, in addition to teaching his conducting classes and giving some conducting master classes, I presented a seminar on American choral music.
Yes.
And then I also visited Basel, where I presented the same seminar at the Conservatory of Music there, and then later on traveled to Stockholm at the end of that same period of time and presented a seminar there.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And Professor John is recognized internationally, obviously, but also nationally with the American Choral Directors Association. He is fully established and has just offered masterful classes and has made great contributions there. Could you tell us a bit about what you've done there? And I'm going to brag on you, so don't let that bother you, okay?
Well, I've given presentations at various national conferences.
Yes.
Mostly, one was on related to my research on Brahms, and another one was related to the state of choral scholarship, so to speak, particularly in the United States today.
I see.
And then a third one, which is relevant to this program in particular, was at a symposium in Washington, D.C. called The Search for an American Style.
Yes.
And I was part of a panel of people who discussed the origins of the American style. What is an American style? Is there an American style? What does that even mean?
In choral music.
In choral music, but sort of in a broader sense also.
Yeah.
So it was a choral conference, but there were composers from all over the states and present.
Exactly. Yeah. Sure, absolutely. Yeah. One of the interesting points that I read in the materials that you sent to me, and of course you've told me about this before, was that your thoughts go back to Antonin Dvorak, when it comes to your dealing with the origins of American choral music. Now, we are about to hear a composition that, of course, is not Dvorak. It's a modern composition based upon poetic text by Walt Whitman.
Yes.
So that brings us to today. But very, very quickly, can we go through, or can you give us an idea of what the roots of American choral music are as you presented the ideas in the conference at the American Choral Directors Association as they relate to Dvorak?
Sure.
Please.
Well, Dvorak was invited in the 1890s to come to America and had the National Conservatory of Music in New York City, which was a brand new thing.
Yeah, he was the director.
He was the director.
Yes, yeah, sure.
And you know, America is such a melting pot, and I think Europeans in particular at that time were very curious to see what would come out of America musically speaking. So it was an eye-opening trip for Dvorak.
Yes.
He not only lived in New York, he went to Iowa for part of his time here, and in the course of being here, he came in touch with American folk music.
Yes.
In particular, one of his students, Harry T. Burley, an African American, sang spirituals to him in his apartment in New York City, and he came in contact with that culture and with the Native American culture, and he had his idea was that Americans needed to use their own indigenous folk music as a means to create an American sound. Dvorak also had extraordinary influence on American composers in the first half of the century. And just briefly, you know, there's a lineage from Dvorak to his student Will Marion Cook, who briefly taught Ellington.
Yes.
And then Dvorak taught Reuben Goldmark, who taught Aaron Copland, and who also briefly taught George Gershwin. Yeah. So his ideas have seeped into our musical culture almost unconsciously now, that we're not aware of.
Exactly.
So that kind of brings us more to the present now, with Jeffrey Van, the composer of the piece that we'll be performing, which is entitled "A Procession Winding Around Me," and it pairs Jeffrey Van, contemporary American composer, with Walt Whitman, Civil War poet. And Van was inspired by his visit to the Gettysburg battlefield.
Exactly.
And the movement that we're performing for you, Beat, Beat Drums, evokes qualities of the battle.
Yes.
And it uses the guitar. And the guitar uses different techniques to depict gunshots and snare drums. And so.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to hear Jeffrey Van's Beat, Beat Drums, which is a movement from his four-movement composition.
Yes, A Procession Winding Around Me.
A Procession Winding Round to Me.
A Procession Winding around Me.
Yeah, around me.
Yes, and that's the title of a Walt Whitman poem.
Poem, exactly.
Beat, beat drums, blow, bugles blow. Through the windows, through doors, burst like a ruthless force. Into the silent church, and scatter the congregation. Into the school where the scholar is studying. Leave not the bridegroom quiet. No happiness now with his bride. Nor the peaceful farmer any peace. Now in his burial gathering his grain. So fierce you were and how you drums. So shrill you bugles blow. Beat, beat, drums, blow, bugles, blow. Over the traffic of cities, over the rumble of wheels in the streets. Our beds prepared for sleepers at night in the houses. No sleepers must sleep in those beds. No bargainers, bargains by day. No brokers or speculators, would they continue? Would the talkers be talking? Would the talkers be talking? Would the singer attempt to sing? Would the lawyer rise in the court to state his case before the judge? Let the vicar carry a drums. You bugles wilder blow. Beat, beat, drums, blow, bugles, blow. Make no parley, stop for no expostulation. Mind not the timid, mind not the weeper or prayer. Mind not the old man beseeching the young man. Let not the child's voice be heard, nor the mother's entreaties. Even the trestles to shake the dead where they lie, awaiting the hearses. So strong you fall, oh terrible drums, so loud you bugles blow.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back on the set. We just heard a wonderful composition. Thank you very much, Professor John, for leading that. I had a sense that it left us still expecting more to come because it ends on that dominant, oh. But of course, there are two more movements.
Two more movements.
Absolutely. So we would encourage our listeners to explore the music or research the music and listen to it for themselves. And thank you again for it.
Sure.
Now we have the honor of welcoming you, Ms. Kim Sherman, composer, who is associated with Professor John, friend of, colleague with, and composer of the next work we're going to hear. So welcome to the program, Kim.
Thank you so much.
Yes, it's wonderful. I have had the opportunity to share with you and meet with you, so I appreciated that very much so. But I'm going to ask you, Jim, how did you folks meet?
Well, I just met Kim last fall, and I came across her piece that you'll hear via a wonderful recording by a Musica Sacra, and I was inspired to Google it, and up came. Well, I knew Kim was the composer, and I decided to email Kim because I was looking for a piece specifically for a program I was doing on music of love and war.
Yes.
And I wanted to see the score, and I emailed her, and that was it.
There we
The
are.
rest was
Wonderful.
history.
Yeah. Can you give us some information about the composition? This is your music. This is your composition. We're going to hear it in a couple of minutes. Can you give us some information about it?
Yes. It's one movement from a larger work called Service for the Dead in Bosnia-Herzegovina.
Yes.
And this movement, I feel, is what allows the characters that are, I mean, I think of it as a little, it's not exactly a play, but it's a dramatic event. And by going through this particular piece of the music, it allows them to then go back to their lives. But it's a very mournful, devastating piece.
What is the association with motherhood in the text?
There's one line of text in this whole piece of music.
In this movement, or
yes,
in this movement that we're about to hear.
The rest of it is just choral sounds. But the one line of text is, "All war moves on mother's flesh," which is very powerful.
Can we settle on that idea? Everyone who dies in a war has a mother.
Yes.
And it settles on her flesh. My goodness. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to have met you and to have had the conversation that we had in the little diner in Upper Manhattan. It was really great. Good to meet you, and we're really thrilled now that we're going to hear this wonderful work. Professor, I'm going to ask you, can you give us a thought about what it is to conduct the piece? Can you give us an idea of any of the conducting?
Well, the conducting, it's fairly straightforward, but what I love about the piece is it's drama, and it's the way Kim uses the voices. She uses some extended techniques, so there's some overtone singing at the very beginning, which maybe we'll talk about later. But it's from a point of view of dramatic pacing and kind of the power, the emotional impact that the piece has. It's wonderful to lead a group and try to bring that out.
Wonderful. Yeah. And the name of the composition is?
Graveside.
Graveside. Thank you. Yes, and thank you. Thank you, Kim Sherman. That was quite beautiful. I remember in our conversations that you had told me that you had a composition performed by the San Jose Chamber Symphony, a chamber orchestra?
Chamber orchestra. San Jose Chamber Orchestra.
Yeah, and whose conductor is, again?
Barbara Day Turner.
Yes,
She's
wonderful.
Wonderful.
Well, we want to now see if we can just get a sense of what else you can tell us about your background. As a composer, and especially as a composer of choral music, can you give us a bit of that, please?
I think the most important part of my background as a composer is, well, a couple of things. I studied with some great teachers, and including Thea Musgrave, who I still am friends with. She's wonderful.
Outstanding and leading composer in American musical experience.
And the other thing is that I dared to walk to the other side of the conservatory building where I went to college and wrote music in the theater department.
And what college was that again?
Lawrence University in Appleton, Wisconsin.
Yes.
Very cold. But, you know, it was sort of a tradition that the conservatory and the theater didn't really like have a lot of mixers.
Right.
And I was, you know, I liked going over there, and because you could really do things. I could try things, and I could throw things out, and I could try something else. And it was a lot of instant gratification.
Wonderful.
Writing music for plays.
As a young composer for plays.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Sure, you were invited to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, and it's great training. And we were just talking earlier about what great training it is to write theater music, because you might have to write something, you know, about 1929, or you might have to write something about Germany or Shakespeare, or something very contemporary or something very ancient, and you know, you might need something that's 2 seconds longer, or this doesn't work, throw it away.
Right.
So it just makes you very versatile and let go of things.
Yes.
Change things.
A lot of that has to do with having to be really fluent with style and knowing how to compose in different styles.
Yes.
Isn't that right?
Partly that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That's great.
And then the challenge is how to be in a style and still make it my own.
My goodness.
Yeah.
You told me when we met that and had that nice little lunch that Joseph Papp was an influence. Can you tell us about that before we close the show?
When I first came to New York, I had been living in Minnesota and collaborating with some theater artists, and one of them had come to New York and got Joe Papp to commission us to write this thing. So I came along and I thought, well, I'll just go to New York and write this piece, and then I'll go back to Minnesota. And then one day he looked at me and he said, well, you're moving here, aren't you?
To New York, right?
And I said, well, yes. Yes, I am.
If Joe Papp asked you if you're moving to New York, you say yes.
Exactly.
Right, exactly. Tell our audience again who Joe Papp is, please.
He started the Public Theater in New York City.
Yes.
And started the Free Shakespeare in the Park, and was a big influence on American theater.
Absolutely right. Well, thank you so very, very much. Professor John, did you have anything that you wanted to ask or share? Or
I just think it's interesting that Jeffrey Van, our other composer, is from Minneapolis. So we've had
the Minnesota connection.
Minnesota connection. That's very nice. Very, very good. Well, this is wonderful. I celebrate your collaboration, conductor, composer, composer, conductor, and it's really an honor for me just to sit here and share with you as one who is a lover of music. Thank you both for being a part of our program. Ms. Kim Sherman, composer, and Professor James John, conductor, orchestral and choral conductor. Thank you. We appreciate it.
It's
and
great
thank
to be
you.
here.
Thank you for joining us on American Music, where we live our stories through public television. Join us again.